Good morning, Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's kind of an icy, rainy, wet morning here in February 2021. But I'm warm and dry, warmish. I still got my dirty shop coat on. That's what it's for. This morning I'm doing some head work on the 6-liter LS project. I'll show you what I'm doing. It's a cold day, February day. It's President's Day, and I'm out in the box stealing some parts off this long crank. See how the crankshaft sticks out? 0.400. Normally it's flush. 4.8. That is unfortunately full of water. It only has 70,000 miles on it, but somebody didn't store it properly, so I'm going to steal the rocker arms off it for the 6-liter. Let's get after it. Super clean inside. This doesn't happen in the Northeast. I'm going to harvest this dipstick and make it work with that pan. But they usually froze in there pretty good. That's moving. I'll be able to get that out of there. In the last video, when I was working on removing the broken exhaust bolts and I had the head sitting on the bench, intake side down, I just wanted you to know that the intake surface itself, the sealing surface, can't touch the bench because the valve cover ridge holds it away from there. So if you thought I was being careless, I wasn't. I just knew it wouldn't touch. Anytime I have a machine surface, I'm really careful about setting it down on anything. An early morning project today. I have a nice plastic valve train organizer. Right after I bought it, I immediately filled it full of parts when I bought a used 427, and it's outside in the shed. So it actually took longer to lay out and drill the holes in this 2x6 so I can keep the valves in order than it did to pop the first head apart. And as expected, I mean, the valve job's perfect. I'm just going to touch it up with grinding compound and swirl them around after I get the head clean. I believe I'm going to soak the whole thing in my 5-gallon bucket of carb cleaner and then, do half and flip it over. The valve seals on an LS are actually the bottom spring seat, and I have new ones because I don't think I'll get these off without wrecking them, and they're cheap enough. This set of heads has 2-piece valve stem seals, where the seal is separate from the spring seat. Knowing I was going to run the 1218 pack single beehive spring, I went with the later style top hat 1-piece. You can only run a single spring on this. You will need the 2-piece style and a different spring seat if you're going to run dual springs. I love it when the information that I need is right on the end of the box and I don't have to look it up. In this case, my installed height needs to be 1.800. Checking with my Beehive height mic, I'm at 1.800 with the stock hardware. I realize most everything in the LS world is drop on without measuring, but I always measure anyway. In this case, the thickness of these with a spring rest right here is about 5 thousandths bigger than the 2-piece spring seat that I currently have on the head that I'm measuring with. But in this case, I guess I'll just let it ride. Bigger is better than smaller, so in this case I have a little more tension on the spring. I have still plenty of room before I hit coil bind. No big deal. Once again, the information's right on the box. Installed at 1.800. Open is 1.200, so that this spring will allow 600 valve lift. And it'll bind at 1.140. Gives you a little safety margin, so that 5 thousandths isn't going to make a difference. The sloppy stage 2 cam that I installed is 0.585 lift. So we're good. Got my head soaking. I'll give it maybe half a day, maybe a day, I don't know. Then I'll turn it over and do the same. And then repeat for the other head. Not a fast process for sure. And then it will either be back into the wash tank, or maybe in here in the ultrasonic cleaner The head is 19.5 inches, and this is 19.5 inches ID. I don't remember if it actually fits or not. I know the valve covers fit. When I bought it, I wanted the cylinder head to fit, but I don't know if I made it or not. But maybe diagonal, it'll go. I'll let you know. Didn't mean to rhyme there. The height mic for measuring the valve spring installed height goes in place of the spring. You have to collapse it fully. It's threaded. So you turn it in. It allows you to put the locks on, and then you have to spin it back out tight, and it's a direct reading right in place. Pretty slick rig for cheap money. I picked up this valve grinder in a trade, and I'm anxious to use it. It's almost ready to go. I have to build an oil tank and get an oil hose because it runs oil over the stone while you're cutting the valve. This machine does the valve itself. I also have a seat grinder, which has a stud that you put in place of the valve itself, and it has a conical head stone that you have an air-powered driver, and you touch it on the seat. So you're grinding the seat and the valve. So you're taking material off. When you remove material from the valve seats and the face of the valve, you have to do a couple things to compensate for that. When you remove material from the valve seat and the valve face, you effectively move the valve further in the head. That makes your installed height greater, so your valve spring is now too loose. You need to shim. With a two-piece style seal, you could shim under the seat. With a one-piece, you need to shim between the valve seal and the valve spring. Moving the valve further into the head also increases your lifter preload. So you remove, on the valve grinding machine, there's another stone that removes material above the valve lock. So whatever you take off here, you take off here as well. So your lifter preload should stay the same. But in this case, I'm just going to lap them in because everything's in nice shape. And I really don't want to change or have to shim my installed height and take material off the valve if I don't have to. Growing up with small and big block Chevys, every time I took a head apart, typically the valve guides were wiped out. You could knurl the valve guides, you could have new ones put in. You never got away with this. I've never got away with this. Sometimes I'd strip 4 or 5 big block cylinder heads just to try to get some I didn't need to do a lot of work to, and that was just for a stock rebuild. Nothing I was going to actually make any power with, so. This stuff is durable. Once I set the camera down yesterday, I easily wiggled the dipstick out of the hole. It's a little bit bent, but it's not broken. Here in the Northeast, typically, this is broken off in the block, and you either got to push it down inside, and believe it or not, the magnetic drain plug will grab it eventually, and you go to change the oil, and it'll come right out with the drain plug. I didn't believe that till my buddy at the dealership told me that, and I tried it, and it worked. So I'll be able to manipulate that back straight, and I'll have to remark it to fit my pan. They give you a part number for a different dipstick tube and dipstick that should bolt in, but I can make this work. When I fill the engine with the correct amount of oil, I'll just mark it accordingly. The first set of rocker arms I took off were nice and clean. Second set on the other side of the same engine weren't quite as clean, and then I remembered that this engine did get some water in it, but these will clean up. They are low mileage. I got about 70,000 miles on them, but I believe it's Brian Tooley Racing, the trunnion kit to remove the needle bearings and put solid trunnions in each one. For the other engine I want to build with a forged bottom end, I have the tie-bar lifters that I mentioned and a nice Lenardi camshaft. I also have a set of Highland Sharp roller rockers. But in an LS, they're almost not needed. I see people going a lot faster than I'll ever go with the stock stuff. Hard to believe. My lifters are still soaking. When I went out yesterday into the storage box to get the rocker arms off that 4.8, I was also going to pull the heads off and take out the lifter trays. Originally, I was going to steal the lifters out of it, but I got a good deal on these and the push rods. But it was really cold out yesterday, and I decided maybe I do a little shopping for new General Motors lifter trays, and I found them for $6 a piece. So I couldn't really see freezing to death when I could just buy new ones. So they're coming. Be here at the end of the week. And hopefully by then I'll have a couple heads reasonably clean and not so quite so ugly, ready to install. Because you need to put the lifters and lifter trays. You need to put the lifters in the lifter trays and install before the heads on an LS. You can't change the lifters without pulling the heads off. Well, I got carried away this morning and overshot breakfast, so I'm going to head up to the house, hopefully without falling down, and eat. I'm hungry. Next video, I'm going to break out the tools that I lucked into to do the trunnion upgrade on the rocker arms. I've done it before without the tools. I think it'll be easier this time, but we're going to find out together. I appreciate you watching. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff, please. And I'll catch you next time.